G'day everybody, it's Chris from SupRacer here. Welcome back to another episode of Paddlecast Quarantine Edition. My guest today is an absolute legend in the paddling community, Larry Cain, an Olympic gold medalist, a veteran of the stand-up paddling community, and the head coach of the most sought-after online trading program, Paddle Monster. Larry is an amazing guy. I had a really, really good time on today's call. I let Larry do most of the talking because this guy's been paddling competitively for 4 decades, and I was really, really excited that he could share that wealth of knowledge just over an hour. I think we're gonna have to do another one of these with Larry. We got to the hour 20-minute mark, and I thought we better cut it there to keep these daily episodes within a reasonable limit. But there was a lot of things I wanted to chat with him about that we didn't even get time to. So I think we're gonna have to have another chat with Larry in the next couple of weeks because he's a fascinating guy, and I was stoked that he could share some of his insights from paddling up there in cold water Canada, where the water's frozen for several months of the year. But no, just a really interesting chat today. And I highly, highly encourage you to go check out the Paddle Monster training program. I think it's more important now than ever because we got a lot of downtime, and those guys are working really hard to give the students a lot of at-home drills you can do. If you can't even get on the water, or if you can go solo paddling, then it's a fantastic resource because, when you can't paddle in groups, you really need that personalized training. They're also doing some really cool stuff on Facebook. I'll send the link somewhere over there, wherever it is, to the Paddle Monster Facebook page. They're doing some great stuff every day on Facebook Live to keep the community connected. Just a really, really cool group of guys over there at Paddle Monster, guys and girls. We're going to chat with Seychelles next, actually, on Paddlecast Quarantine Edition. Anyway, we're going to jump into it with Larry Cain. Just a quick heads up, next week we're going to launch something called Club SupRacer. It's a little bit of fun we're having here at SupRacer to just keep the SupRacer ship rolling along. It's going to be a paid monthly membership. If you want to contribute and basically just support the creative work of SupRacer, support these daily podcasts to make sure I can keep doing these and all the work that comes through SupRacer, the world rankings, the news, everything behind the scenes there. So Club SupRacer is going to be a members only kind of insiders access club. Really, the fundamental reason is just if you want to contribute a few bucks a month to support SupRacer creatively, I am going to bribe you to join. We're going to have some fun little members-only bonuses, but have a look out for that in the next few days. And if you're listening to this in the future, then head to supracer.com/club and you'll get all the info. Club SupRacer, coming soon. Jump on Paddle Monster as well. For now, let's welcome to the show, Sir Larry Cain. Also, if you're wondering why there's smoke drifting across this, just wafting across the screen here, I don't actually smoke. I'm not Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan podcast either. Just got some incense burning. Larry Cain, welcome to Paddlecast Quarantine Edition, mate. All the way over there in Canada. How's it going?
Thanks
How are you surviving the apocalypse?
It's good so far. I mean, I'm healthy so far. Friends and family are so far healthy, knock wood. I'm off the water right now. I plan on going back on the water on the 20th, pretty much no matter what's happening. But I thought it was appropriate to lay low for a while. The community that I grew up in and where I paddle, I'm fairly well known, and I think if they did close the parks, they made a big emergency declaration. They closed the parks. They said, they don't want you, using the park facilities and being in large groups. But I mean, paddling is the most socially isolated sport you can do. And,
yeah,
I mean, when you're out in the water, there's no one near you. The big thing is I just don't want to cross any taped off areas to access the water. So what I've done is I've scouted out all the different launch points, and I've got a handful of different places I can launch from that are going to be, I'm not going to be moving any barriers or trespassing or anything like that. And I know that once I'm out there, I don't think anyone's going to have a hard time with it. But I did think that given the fact that everyone got really, on edge about a lot of things last weekend when they launched this emergency decree, and there's, all this, simmering panic, I just thought it appropriate to sort of lay low. And you're kind of giving society like a big middle finger if they're all making sacrifices and then you go out and do what you always do in front of them. So I just thought I'd lay low and be respectful of the situation, what people are going through, and I can do some other things out of my house, weights in my garage, running, bike riding, that type of thing, and I'll get back in the water in a little over a week, and I may do it like a ninja, like early in the morning, late at night, rotate my launch points and that type of thing, just so no one can really track me down. But because I don't want to be obnoxious about it, but this life of deprivation is I'm not taking it well. I
was going to say, you probably
I want to paddle, right? It's what I love doing, so I miss it, and I don't particularly feel like I'm putting myself or anyone else at risk when I'm doing it. And especially this time of year, if it was the middle of February or something, it might be a different story. But the danger diminishes a lot as the temperature warms up and the water warms up. So,
I was going to say, you probably paddled more miles or more kilometers. We can speak in kilometers and metric now because neither of us are from America.
We can.
Right. You probably paddled more kilometers than anyone in the stand-up paddle community in your lifetime. You're 57 years age right now, I believe. 57. You've had an extraordinary canoeing career, and now for the last 10 years or so, you've been doing SUP. And you log something like, is it 5,000 kilometers a year?
No, I would say I average 3,500. No, 3,500 K a year. Yeah. So
that's still pretty solid.
It's a lot. If I add up, 40 years of training seriously, given I started training seriously in 1980, and I've averaged 3,500 kilometers a year. Then in all paddlecraft, I'm up to about 120,000 K, which is a lot.
That's solid.
So, but consider this though. You know Malcolm Gladwell, right? 10,000 hours to be an expert.
Yeah.
I've got some issues with that theory in general, because who's to say what the activity is? If it's pretty, if it's not a very complex activity, then 10,000 hours seems like it's a lot. If it's a really complex activity like brain surgery, or being like a concert musician, like a violinist or something, maybe 10,000 hours isn't enough, right? But if you think about, just use 10,000 hours. For me, 3,500 K is that's about 500 hours a year, given that you're not doing all of your paddling at race pace. So say the typical 10K paddle with warm up and cool down is about 80 minutes. So, say it's about 500 hours a year. So that takes 20 years of doing what I'm doing to be an expert, according to Gladwell. So I always throw that out at people. Yeah. So I always throw that out at people who I'm coaching when they're impatient with their performance, and they're not seeing the results that they think they should see after 6 months of training. And because I do think a lot of people have some unrealistic expectations. We live in a society where people expect instant gratification, and they can be, good at something fairly quickly. And I try to explain to them that, like, Connor's Connor because he started doing this, when he was a little kid in the most, outrageous water in the world. And, that's why he can do what he does. I'm never going to do it no matter how many kilometers I log. And so when you get the average person who starts training, and they're doing great and they're improving like crazy, but they're they're still not winning races. And that was their goal, to win races. I try to calm them down and say, it's a process. It's not something that just happens overnight. You can't flick a switch. Yeah. And moreover, why is your goal to win races? Why wouldn't your goal to be just to get better, to keep improving, if I can keep improving at 57 and still be getting better, then anybody can keep improving. You just got to put the time in. And whether you're winning a race depends largely on who shows up to the race too, right?
Yes.
So like I can win a lot of races, but I've yet to win the Carolina Cup. And that's a perfect example. Like it depends on who shows up. So I'm educating people through about this, and people seem to be getting the message. But our society is not set up to encourage people, I think, to take that long-term approach. People want to be good now, and just like if they want to get something, they can go out and buy it, or they can, there's always like a shortcut. There's always an easy way to get to somewhere, and
Yeah.
In a sport like ours, there is no shortcut.
Get on Amazon and order a race victory. Next day shipping.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah, you know. So,
Do you think
but
this
in our sport,
pandemic will make people reassess and maybe slow down and get a little more patient, a little more zen with how they approach their paddling?
I don't know. I really don't know what the world's going to look like after this. I mean, I'm frightened for what it's going to look like economically. Like how many people are just saw the job reports on television for the U.S. and there's a lot of people without jobs. So I really don't know. But it would be great if I think one positive that could come out of it is it helps people understand what's really important in life, and um, maybe people will slow down a bit and be more, as you say, zen-like, and appreciate the like I said, this to me, this is a life of deprivation. If I can't go paddling, it is a big part of what makes me feel good every day is to go out. It's my drug. I go out in the water and it's a cleansing experience. It's a stress relieving experience. It's makes me feel not just physically good, but mentally and emotionally. Brings clarity to my mind.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think part of it for me is that I've been doing it all my life, so it's I'm in the rhythm of doing it. But I do think like everyone finds some place where they feel really really good. They have comfort. They it helps them relieve stress. It helps them find some type of mental clarity. It's like a spiritual place for them. Some people it's a church. Some people it's a certain activity or using their brain to do some type of work. For me, it's being in the water, and it's not just the movement, but it's the environment that I'm doing that movement in. It's being on the water, that feeling the water under your feet and against your paddle, and hearing the sounds. Like I'd never understood the people that wear earbuds when they paddle because you're missing half the experience, right? Like the sound of the nose of your board is making as it's breaking through the water, the sound of the wave coming off the back of your board, the sound of your of the the if you're out in big water, the ocean behind you, it's part of it is I want to hear, if when I'm in the ocean, I want to hear the big wave that's behind me, so I'm ready for it. But that's part of the experience. And then if there's birds flying, you to hear them, or if it's I like being out in the middle of the lake and hearing the sounds of shore muffled in the distance. And then the closer you get to shore, the louder those noises get. And that the city is just over there, and you're like a kilometer out, or sometimes we, on a flat day, we'll go straight out in the middle of the lake for 5 or 6K and turn around. And we just sit in our boards when we get out there, and it's so peaceful and so quiet. And then as you start paddling back in, you start hearing ever more at ever higher volume, the sound of life, like life on land, the hustle and bustle of the city. But those sounds add to the experience, and so all of those things, the wind blowing through your hair as you go, or just blowing at your board shorts, paddling in the snow, paddling under a really angry looking winter sky is a thing of beauty. It's not just the sunny days that are nice, So these things all, it's a sensory experience to me. And when I don't, when you're staying in your house or when you're walking down the sidewalk, you're out of tune with that,
Yeah.
And I'm sure experience exactly similar things when you paddle. We all do, and it's probably one of the things that we all love about it. But think of the experience, the sensory experiences you felt on the Yukon River last year.
I felt a lot of experiences on the Yukon River.
Yeah,
some of them were
maybe it may have
out of body,
right? But I'm sure when
I
you
totally
reflect
agree.
back on it from the comfort of your home, it wasn't just a paddle race; it was an experience, and to a degree, every time I go out in the water, even if it's only for an hour, it's an experience, And so that's what I miss when I'm stuck on land. That's what I miss.
Yeah, right. Well, it's almost like the water is your church kind of thing. That's where you go to find your
Totally,
peace.
exactly. Yeah.
Can you get on the water all year? I've seen some pictures of you paddling like little mini icebergs around. It looks pretty chilly where you are.
It gets very cold in December, and then it stays cold through until kind of mid-March. And cold's a relative thing. This past winter wasn't very cold at all. I think the coldest I paddled in was -10 Celsius, which is cold, but those days were few and far between. We had a pretty mild winter, so we didn't have a lot of days where there was real thick ice buildup on our boards. Last year we had this thing. We get this thing in the northern hemisphere called the Polar Vortex. We don't get it all the time, but it's where the cold air mass over the North Pole gets pushed down over the more populated areas in the middle of the continent. So the Great Lakes, the Northeast, you get some cool days. You can see that in the picture there. That was this year, I believe, and that wasn't a particularly cold day. There's not a lot of ice on my board. That was the day I topped 400K for the year. So that would have been in February sometime. But yeah, when the polar vortex came, I think the coldest day that I paddled in was -24 Celsius. And we had John Bosang up. He came up to do some paddle monster work with me, and we took him paddling. So I geared him up and gave him a board, and it was -24, and it was brilliantly, calm, no wind, not a breath of wind, brilliant sunshine, a really spectacular day, but cold. And so we went, and then we got off the water. It was about an hour and a bit. We got off the water, went and did some work, and the next day he stayed 2 days. The next day, I asked if he wanted to go again, and he said, "No, I'll go to the coffee shop and do some work. I'll meet you guys when you're done." So, but the rest of us went out, and I paddle with a group of guys and girls. They're pretty hardy. They get out in all winter, so I'm rarely ever alone. I'd say on a day where there's good turnout, there'd be 10 of us, and on a day where there's not such good turnout, there might be myself and maybe one other, and out we go. And some days the lake is like glass, and you're breaking through like thin crusts of ice. Some days you're out there and you can see the ice actually forming as you paddle through it. And then other days, the lake is really big. It's a big body of water, and it's big and nasty. My limit for rough conditions changes a little bit. In the winter, I'm a little bit more careful. You don't want to be in the water a whole lot in those temperatures. We are geared up to fall in, and I did fall in a fair bit this year, but I tried to use the 20.75 sprint as much as I could this year, and that gets a little skittish in really big water. But yeah, you know what? It's possible to do it if you're geared up right, and you learn a few little tricks like how to keep your hands warm. You put your gloves up on the dashboard of the car, and you crank the heat, the defrost, so the gloves have hot air pumping on them the whole drive down to where you're paddling. And then when you actually they're the last thing you put on before you lock up your car and head to the water, so that they're really toasty when you put your hands in them, and then your hands don't get cold. And on your feet you get boots that are a size or two too big, and you wear wool socks. And I like to put my feet in bread bags. So I put the socks on, then I put my feet in a bread bag, and then I put them in the neoprene boots, and then I pull
that's your dry suit?
The gasket on my and then I pull I don't have the socks in the dry suit. I just I like to
so that's your homemade dry suit for your feet.
Yeah, and then I just pull the rubber gasket on my dry suit down over the tops of the boots, and it keeps the water out. And And it also, as I found out, that neoprene it doesn't do well with wind. Like wind can get through it.
Mm.
And if you're out, if it's the wind chill is what you got to worry about often in the winter. So I'll put the bread bags on, and I wear those. I can't get them now because everyone's panicked and bought them all. Those doctor's gloves, right? I'll put the doctor's gloves on under my neoprene gloves, and they break the wind, and they keep your hands. So I can just get away with only 3 mil neoprene gloves, and I put the blue doctor's gloves on underneath. And what they do is your hands end up sweating, and you're basically your hands in a pool of your sweat while you're paddling, and so it really warms up and it keeps your hands warm. It blocks the wind from coming through. And then the other thing too is that the way I discovered this was I had a cut in my hand one year, and I put the gloves on and I was paddling, and the cut got infected because, as you know, neoprene gets kind of rancid if you're not cleaning it all the time. And so I just, which is a hassle, right? I mean, probably nobody does it as much as they should. So I just put these gloves on to put the glove on one hand to keep the dirty neoprene away from the cut. And I found out that the hand with the cut was a lot warmer than the hand without. And so I ended up, I just made the discovery that these gloves were a great tool for paddling in cold weather. So we've developed a system, and we just go and do it. And then we go grab a coffee after and talk story about the paddle. And like I said, there's a group of us, and we call ourselves the Paddle Morons. And and we're out there all winter and all
get the
summer.
Coast Guard called on you, or the lake?
Yeah,
Coast
you know
Guard?
what? So what I would say is there is a Canadian Coast Guard is on the lakes. They've never hassled us. We rarely see them because they've got a lot of water to cover and there's not a big force. But the local Marine unit is out a lot in the summer. They're not around in the winter, but in the spring, summer, and fall, they're out. And I would say to anybody who has had a run-in with their local Marine police that you bear responsibility for how that relationship is going to work. We get on great with our guys, and whenever we see them, we go over and talk to them and joke with them. They appreciate us. They know that we're geared up, that we've got all our safety stuff. They know that we're rarely alone. They know that we know what we're doing. So they respect us. We respect them. We're always say hi to them. I've already seen them actually during the pandemic. I saw them when I was launching, and I thought, they're going to tell me to get off the water. What am I doing? And so I went over and talked to them, and they could care less that I was paddling. They hadn't seen me since the fall. Hey, how was your winter? How's it going? What? And we talked about the pandemic and everything else, but there was no judgment on their part about what I was doing, and in fact, they even said that they occasionally get 911 calls from people on shore who's in the winter. Oh my God, there's a paddleboard out there, and it's -10, and when they take the call, they'll go, "Are they paddling?" And the person on the other end of the line who called in will say, "Yeah, they're paddling." And the cops will say, "Oh, don't worry about it. They know what they're doing," and because they know it's us, right?
Yeah.
So and they also know that when we're out there too, if we see somebody out there that doesn't know what they're doing, we're going to do something about it, right? We've gone over and told people, "Hey, you shouldn't be out here right now, or you don't have a leash. You shouldn't be out in the lake without a leash, or whatever." Like we're because we're there every day, and we've got a good thing going. We don't want to lose it. We're able to sort of do some of their work for them, and sort of keep an eye out for people. And I think that's good policing, right? That's like in the old days where you see in the movies, like the old time movies where they have the local cop who walks a beat and knows every person in the neighborhood. They know when all the kids' birthdays are. They're just and everybody knows the officer by his first name, and they invite him in for coffee, when he's on his rounds. And things didn't happen in those neighborhoods because everyone knew the cop and liked him, and the cop knew exactly what was going on. And I think that that's the approach that the Marine unit can have with a lot of people, if they do good policing. But if you're confrontational all the time, then it doesn't work that way. And so part of it is you need, good cops, but part of it is the responsibility is ours to be respectful of them and to be cooperative with them, and to let them know that we know what we're doing, that we're safe, we take our safety seriously, and so we've developed a really good relationship with them, and it makes it easier for everybody.
Why is everyone in Canada so polite and nice? I've heard the stereotype.
I think that's a stereotype.
I've heard the stereotype, but my first trip to Canada was last year for the Yukon race. And from the first moment I arrived and went through customs, it was the most polite experience of my life. The stereotype's true, mate. Everyone up there's nice.
Well, that's flattering. I'm happy to hear that. I think when you live here, you find that not everyone is as polite as you as you might think. I also think too. I think I think in general we're really good to visitors, right? I mean, I think it's. I live on the outskirts, in the suburbs of the biggest city in the country, one of the most multicultural cities in the world, and I'm sure there's race problems in the city. I mean, I'd be naive to think that there weren't, but I do think that we're very tolerant of people from where, regardless of where they come from, or what language you're speaking, or what accent they have, or what color their skin is, or what religion they are. And so, how we got there, I don't know. I'm happy that's the way we are, but I think I do think that when people see or meet somebody from another country, or when they know that someone's come to their community for an event, I think they try extra hard to be polite and helpful and considerate and show the person a good time. And I'll be honest with you, most of the people around the world and places that I've traveled to are the same way. When they know that you're from somewhere else and that you've come to their country to visit, and if I look back on all the experiences that I've had, people have been really good to me when I travel. So,
yeah.
I think part of it, I think that your experience was based on that. And because I do think when you live in a certain place and you're in one place long enough and interacting with people day to day, you do find that there are people that aren't so polite. But for the most part, we live in a pretty decent country. I do like most of my fellow Canadians.
Well, you're not just a Canadian, you're a Canadian gold medalist. You won the 1984, I believe, gold medal.
Yeah, 84, yeah.
84. Yeah. Tell us about your career. When did you start paddling? And what did you paddle?
So
for those that don't know. I'm going to try and find a picture of your old school C1.
Yeah, there's one on the Instagram if you're on. If you scroll through, there might be one more recent. I think I posted one this winter. I started paddling when I was 11 years old, and
here we go. Throwback.
How I stumbled into it was, yeah, there we go. That's
Check
like 1982, I think. So I'm 19 there. So when I was 11, some friends of mine from the neighborhood and me, our mothers enrolled us in canoeing at what was then the Oakville Racing Canoe Club, and we went down to the club and we were exposed to pleasure canoes. We got the whole water safety. It was a 2-week course, so we learned all about water safety and the different canoe strokes, how to get back in a swamp canoe, how to empty it, on the water, how to do like canoe over canoe rescues, things like that. Wasn't really any racing canoeing, but while we were there, we saw the racing canoes, like the one in the picture, and that's called a C1. And the C actually means Canadian. For the longest time, I thought it meant canoe one, but it actually means Canadian. It's the only sport
you learn something
in the
new every
Olympic
day
program that I know of that is named after a country. So it's the Canadian singles or the Canadian doubles. And in fact, my medal from the Olympics, on the edge of it, it has the event engraved, and it says Canadian singles 500 meters. And so we saw these canoes, and we asked if we could try them. And so what they did was they created a program where we could come back and do like an introduction to racing canoeing. So we all did that, and we ended up doing it. I ended up from probably 11, 14 years old being at the canoe club from 9 until noon, and then from 1 until 4, and then again in the evening, every weekday, all summer, playing in canoes and kayaks, and learning how to paddle. And by the time I was 13, I was racing. And when I was 15, I started to do really well. And I was lucky that I had really good direction, really good coaching right from the start. And also some good older paddlers to paddle with, to chase and to eventually pass, and to set really good examples about training and taking it training even when I was a kid. And so in 1980, I went to the Olympic trials, and I just missed making the Olympic team. I came second in the 1,000-meter C1 at the Olympic trials, and we only send one entry per event per country, so I didn't make the team. But Canada ended up boycotting the Olympics in 1980 because they were in Moscow.
That was the whole Cold War Olympics, right?
Right. The Russians had invaded Afghanistan, and now we're there. But they invaded Afghanistan, in like around Christmas 1979. So Jimmy Carter basically said the Americans were going to boycott, and they put pressure on a lot of their allies to boycott. So we boycotted, and as it turns out, it wouldn't have affected me because I came second at the Olympic trials. But what happened was they sent the what would have been the Olympic team to a series of events, like all the World Cup events in Europe that year before the Olympics, and they sent some extras. So me being a young up-and-comer who had just missed making the team, I got to go on that trip. I actually benefited from the 1980 Olympics, which is hard to say because a lot of people, it was devastating for them, but I got opportunities because of it that I wouldn't have otherwise have got. And I actually raced really well against seniors. So I was only 17 at the time, and I raced really well against guys that ended up racing and winning medals at the Olympics that year. And when I came home at the Nationals, I won the Nationals. In fact, I won my age group, and then I won the Senior B, which was like the second tier of senior. We call it junior in Canada. And then I won the senior races. So I became the best in the country. And so at that point, the 84 Olympics, even though it was 4 years away, became a real reality. And that's what I began training for. In 1981, I won the 2 gold medals at the World Junior Championships. And I came fifth at
this point?
18. 18. And
so you were number one in Canada at 17,
yeah,
18.
And I was still a junior. So I won the Junior Worlds, and that's where I met Jimmy.
Jimmy Terrell.
He raced there he raced there for the U.S. And then I also came fifth at the World Championships that year. So racing against everybody, the best guys, like not just the juniors. And the next year, the year that photo was taken, I was that's either just before I left or just after coming back from the World Championships in Belgrade, Yugoslavia. And I came fourth in both distances there. And then in 84, I won a gold and a silver. And then that was another boycott Olympics because the Soviets boycotted that year and some of their allied countries.
Were they just pissed about 1980?
Yeah. It was tit for tat for sure. Now the good thing was the world champion from 1983 was from Romania, and he came, and I beat him handily. So
So it was still a very worthy gold.
Yeah, yeah, and it was the best race that I'd ever had at the exact moment of time that I needed to have it, and that's, I think, what the Olympics are really all about, and you hope that that's good enough to allow you to win. In '88, I came fourth. I got the aluminum medal. My friends gave me the top of the top part of a beer can with the hole that you drink through. They got that off the beer can to put some string through it and gave me an aluminum medal for coming fourth. And
nice.
I went back one more time in '92 when they were in Barcelona, and I raced doubles that year. And I really wanted to race singles, but I won all the races at the selection, and but our team result was going to be better if we had myself and my partner race C2, the doubles, and we had a young guy coming up who ended up winning a bronze medal in Sydney in 2000. He had a very good career. So he raced the C1, and that was disappointing. We were a very good C2. We podiumed at World Cups. We were fourth at the World Championships the following year in '93. Just fell off the podium in the last 50 meters of the race. But that year at the Olympics, we didn't work well together, and we were seventh. And I say we were fighting when we're in the boat, and everyone thinks that we're fist fighting. It's just our blades weren't working perfectly together. Our power transmission was a little out of sync, and the margin for error and something like that is really small. And
that's fascinating. We don't have that in SUP. The whole C2.
No, we don't. Right? We do not have crew.
It's a whole different skill set
in SUP. It is. It really is. Being able to match and follow and apply your power to the blade perfectly, so it's perfectly mirroring the person that you're paddling with.
So you got to be perfectly synchronized.
It's maximum perfectly. I mean, not just in stroke, but the way you're applying power to your blade, the amount of water you're gathering, and the amount of the way you're working against that water has to be through the entire stroke has to be identical in order for you to get maximal run out of that boat. And we didn't do that as well there as we did a lot of other times when we raced. Oh, you got my '84 race.
I don't know where you found a little blast
that.
From the past here.
Sure. Yeah. So
what are we watching here? Was this the gold medal race?
What lane am I in there? Is that lane 7?
Yeah. I think this is lane 84 7. So this is the C1 500.
Yeah. This is it. So world champion from Romania is in lane 1. I'm in lane 7. There's a guy from Denmark who comes second, actually, and he is in, what lane is he in?
Denmark's in the second lane.
He's lane 2. He's in lane 2, yeah. And and you can see, getting back to SUP, you can see the 9 lanes, perfectly straight, perfectly flat water. Lanes, buoy markers are here, I think they're 12.5 meters apart. The runway at an airport with all the lights, you just stay in your lane, and the lanes are 9 meters wide, so you're well away from any of the other boats. You can't draft, or we used to call it ride wash, unless you get way far behind, right? You're not in anyone's affected by the boats around you so much. And this is what like the ICF Worlds, this is similar to what the ICF Worlds had for the sprint that I watched on the video feed last year. Really exciting. And so, this could become, I think, another aspect of stand-up paddling that would be really interesting and exciting. It always amazes people that we don't change sides in these boats, people from the stand-up paddling world. But you can see that the stroke is really similar. I mean, the body position here is really similar to stand-up paddling. That when you compare stand-up paddling to outrigger paddling, there's a fair amount of difference. But when you compare stand-up paddling to C1, there's not a whole lot of difference between kneeling on one knee like this and then actually standing up. It's like you got a really big staggered stance. Like this is like your surf stance sort of on your paddleboard.
How do you go for 500 meters on one side?
Yeah, you just and these boats, we were steering at the back of the stroke. You can see as if you watch any of these guys, when there's a close up, you can see at the end of the stroke the blade. You can see the blade kind of turns 90 degrees as it's exiting, and it sort of pries off the side of the board or the side of the boat, and it's like a modified J stroke, and what it does is you're pushing the tail of your board to the opposite side, like you're pushing you're pushing the tail of your board.
Gold.
So I paddle on the right. I paddle on the right. I'd be pushing the tail of my board to the left, which brings my nose back to the right and keeps it running straight. And it's kind of the opposite to what we do on our stand-up boards, where the tail of our board is pinned in place by the fin, and we have to, instead of moving the back of the board to bring the nose straight, we end up pulling the nose to the paddle, right, to keep the board straight and steer without changing sides.
What was the feeling like claiming the gold?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. It was a really, like I said, it was one of the best races I'd ever had, and one of the most focused races I'd ever had. Like seriously, I was like this. I took a look on the starting line to my left, and I saw the 6 other guys, and I took a quick look to my right and saw 2 other guys. And I just kind of thought, well, like I've beaten all these guys before. Some of them have beaten me, and I have to, I can do this, but I've just got to, I've got to do it. I've got to do my race as well as I've ever possibly done it before. And so I just, at that point there's nothing else to see on either side of me. I'm just going to look straight down the course at the finish line. And that was all that mattered. And, so I had a decent start, and then the transition from, start sprint to the traveling speed was exceptional, and I just locked into a rhythm that was really good. And like I said, I didn't look around at all during the race. I just had this sensation of quiet around me because I was out far enough in front that I couldn't really see any other boats out of my peripheral vision, and I couldn't really hear anyone else. And that was a good feeling. And then, so I kept my focus, for, I would say 500 meters or 400 to the 500 meters. I didn't let my focus vary at all. And then I do remember in the last 100 meters, realizing that, it was going to take a catastrophe to lose it. And it was, at that point, it was, don't fuck it up, like don't, it was just like, I was a little bit more cautious in the last probably 75 meters that I just, didn't, do something. Yeah, they're tippy. So when I learned no fin, when I started doing this, I went down to the club with my friends and I fell in the water so fast. Like the coach showed us how to get in. I kneeled in it, and I wasn't in the boat for more than for not even a second, and I was in the water. Like I didn't even know how I got in the water. and I was like that for the first like few weeks anyway. And then even when I could get away from the dock and, take a few strokes, I'd still had really bad balance. I was one of the last in my group that I started with to be able to actually paddle. I remember we used to think there was these gas docks for motorboats that were about 150 meters down the river from where our canoe club docks were. And I remember if you could get down to the gas docks and back, you were really good. And then I remember after that, if you could paddle in the canoe with your jeans and running shoes on, it meant you were really good because you were super confident that you weren't going to fall in. And it took me all summer to be able to do that, to be able to say that I could go with my jeans and not fall in. So it wasn't the best start. I remember when I brought my parents down to watch me. I went home at dinner and told them, I did it today. It was so good. I didn't fall in. You got to come and see me. And they all came down after dinner, and I went out and showed them. And of course, I pushed off the dock and fell in right away. And I did that 3 or 4 times, before I actually got off the dock and got anywhere. So it's hard, and this is why this sport, sprint canoeing, I think actually has trouble growing. Like that's why you don't see.
This looks hard.
You have to start with. It is. You have to start when you're young, or you don't ever. You're just so far behind on your, like in the mid '80s, the World Masters games were in Toronto, and they started. So a lot of old paddlers came back and started training for them, and a lot of parents at the canoe club got into it, and they started paddling, thinking that they could, pick up a new sport and go to the World Masters games. And you can tell so easily somebody who used to paddle, they could be out of the boat for 20 years and never set foot in a boat, and they can get in the boat and they'll be a little shaky, but they can paddle, and you can go, oh, that guy used to paddle. And you can get like an adult, a fit adult who's never done it before, and they're useless. Like they cannot stay in the boat despite every effort that they make. And it takes them a long time just to balance. And then it takes so long to learn how to balance that you're so far behind in learning how to paddle properly, And the great thing about stand-up paddling is people can stand on boards. You can, if you get the right board, you can stand on it and feel reasonably solid right away. And then you can start to learn how to paddle. But in these canoes, it's just like, you're so far behind. You never really get a chance to learn how to paddle properly. You're just trying to balance. And so, again, that's why the people who tend to do well are people who, it's very rare do you find somebody who started, even when they're a late teenager. Most of these people are starting, who are racing internationally, start when they're little kids, like I did, 11 years old or younger. And, and they get some balance and they get some basic skills. And then as they get older, they can learn how to paddle better and they can train. But you can't train if you can't balance or can't steer the boat, or you can't do that. So you get so far behind, you never catch up. But stand-up paddling is a lot better because you can get people who, and I can think of lots of people who started paddling late and who are really good paddlers, and in water like this, like it's the same thing for me. Like I came from a paddling background, so it made that transition easier. I'm never going to be as good as the top ocean guys are in the ocean. I'm competent now, but I'm never going to be as good as Connor or some of those guys, just because that's the environment they grew up in, and they were doing that from the time they're little kids. But you can be a very good stand-up paddler in less extreme conditions, and having started as an adult, even without a paddling background like I had. And so that's a cool thing about stand-up paddling, is that you can start late and still be really good in it. It's funny. I compare the two sports all the time, and so I would say that the race you just watched, it looks hard, but in many ways it's not as complex as stand-up paddling, because you're only paddling on one side. You're paddling in perfectly flat water, and so you only have to paddle fast in a straight line on perfectly flat water. And on a paddleboard, you've got to paddle on both sides. And so think of how many sports we see where people are doing, first of all, any paddling, whether it's the C1 or whether it's stand-up paddling, it's a pretty complex sport motion. You're using your entire body, and balance is involved. You're trying to generate large amounts of force when balance is precarious, and you're using your whole body to do it. And it's not like running where you're pushing off the ground and the ground's solid and not moving. What you're working against to propel yourself is fluid, right? So it's harder to find connection than it is on a solid surface like the ground. So it's very complex. Unlike rowing, where there's oarlocks and a slide, and your movement's really fixed and dictated by those. In any paddle sport, there's not, there's so many degrees of freedom of movement that it's really hard to control your movement. It's very complex. But as complex as sprint canoeing is, stand-up paddling is even more, because you're doing it in such a variety of conditions. You have to do it on both sides. And can you imagine how many sports do we see that require you to do something equally well from both sides? Like, who hits a golf ball from both sides, right? How many tennis players do you see, switch sides halfway through a match or through a game or a set? They don't do it.
You don't serve on both sides.
You don't serve on both sides. Now the pitchers don't pitch from both sides. The only thing I can think of is, like in baseball, they have switch hitters, so guys will bat from both sides, but they're not even as common as they used to be, because we're getting so specialized in every sport that the guy either bats from the left or a guy bats from the right. There's very few. Soccer is another sport. Like, to be good in a world-class soccer player, you got to be two-footed. You got to be able to play equally well, kick equally well from left and right foot. But that's about it. That's about the only sport I can think of. And so stand-up paddling is incredibly complex just for the paddling part of it in flat water. But then you go out in the ocean and you got to learn how to downwind. You got to be able to paddle in upwind. You got to paddle in sidewind. You got to be able to get out through the surf. You got to be able to surf in. Like, there's so many things that you have to be able to master. And the thing with the ocean is, or a big body of water, is it's never the same. Even like, you can be side by side with somebody and you're dealing with totally different circumstances.
Do you remember your first time in the ocean on a SUP?
I do remember my first time in the ocean. You want to hear
graceful?
About it? Not in the least. So
I definitely want to hear about it.
I started paddling in SUP in 2010. I was coaching at the canoe club, and our national championships were in Regina, which is in the prairies in the middle of the country, and we sent all our boats out there by transport trailer. So none of the kids had their boats to train in. Like, the boats had to leave a few days before the paddlers. So for the last couple of days of training, the kids didn't have canoes to paddle in. So I gave the kids my boat to use, and I didn't have anything to go out in the water to coach from. And so what I did was, I had this stand-up paddleboard that a friend of mine had coerced me basically into taking, you're going to love this. You got to try it. You got to try it. And so I put it in my car, and I hadn't really touched it. But I took it out, and I started paddling on it. And I put my GPS that I always have on my canoe to time the kids, and also to see how slow I was getting. I put that on my paddleboard, and I took note of my paces. And I remember finding a magazine online of a race in North Carolina called the Cold Stroke Classic that was in January. And I remember the results. I think it was either Byron or EJ won the race, and the other one was second. And I remember looking at their times and figuring out, okay, that was a 5-mile race. That meant their time per kilometer was, the pace time per kilometer was, I don't know, like 6:30 per kilometer. And I was like, I can do that. So I decided that I was going to do this race in January. And so a few of us went down from Toronto to Wrightsville Beach, and it was all on the inside. It would be the same as one of the Money Island or the Harbor Island race that they have at Carolina Cup. And I did the whole thing on the right. I don't think I paddled on the left once. And I won the 12.6 class, and I was second to, not very far behind, to a guy named Chris Hill, who was the top local guy. And so I got to know him, and he was a super nice guy, and quick blade rider. So Jimmy, had told me he would be a good guy, he'd help me out and everything. And he was very good. And so I agreed to come. I had to go to Florida to coach canoeing, and I took a board with me in March. And on the way home, I stopped in North Carolina, and I paddled with Chris for a while. And so we did mostly paddling on the inside, and he was keen to learn, from me about technique and what I thought based on my canoe career. And I was keen to try the ocean, but also a little like reluctant. But I remember there was a day where he goes, "Oh, it's really going to go off this afternoon. We'll go downwinding." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, how hard can it be?" And so I met him, and all of a sudden, he didn't have his race board on the roof. He had like it was a bark expedition, which, you know, by today's standards, it was an all-round board, like shaped like a surfboard. And you know, by today's standards, it's hardly a downwind board. But I go, what board is that? He goes, "Oh, it's my downwind board." And I was like, "Uh-oh." So we get down
the
to
first
the
red flag.
beach. First red flag. Second red flag is we get down to the beach, and I can barely carry my board across the beach. It's blowing so hard. And then I got to get out through the break, and I got pummeled. Like, it took me forever to get out. And what I ended up doing is I ended up lying on my board and going out like a surfer, you know, like hand paddling out, lying on my paddle, and kind of duck diving every time as best I could, every time a wave came in. And I finally got out. I went to stand up and fell off. And that just, like, the longest I was ever on the board for was maybe 2 minutes. And the only reason, it was a 9-mile run, so I had 9 miles of like agony, and the only reason I got there is because the wind was blowing me in that direction. And I remember I just couldn't wait to get, like, for it to be over. I was so bruised and battered from falling off my board and climbing back on. I was on my knees for a long time, and finally I could see him and his son sitting on the beach up ahead, about a kilometer ahead, and I just turned to the shore and I walked it the rest of the way. And it was just like humiliating, so humbling. And,
bruised ego.
Oh God. So I got back to the house, and I was seriously considering, like, just packing up and going home. Like, I can't do this. This is like, this is beyond me. And I remember the next morning, he was busy doing something else, and I didn't paddle. I didn't have I was battered. Like, I was bruised and cut, and I didn't feel like going out at all. I was still, and my ego bruised more than anything else. And I get this call from John Bosang and this other guy, William Pope, and they're going, "Hey man, you got to come down and surf with us. Like, this, it's going off. Like, it's so clean, it's so glassy. You got to come out." And I was like, "I don't know, guys. Like, I you know, I went downwinding yesterday. I'm all banged up, and I don't think I'll come down and watch." But they go, "No, you're coming out." Like, they wouldn't take no for an answer. So they came and got me, loaded my board up on their car. Off we went, and we went to that, you know, that put-in Wrightsville Beach that everyone goes to the day before the race. They launch from there, and then they paddle around the corner and check out the inlet.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where we put in. That's where we surfed, and it was chest high, maybe shoulder high, and glassy. Like not a ripple. And I gave it a try, and I got out easily. If I timed it right, I got out easily, and I was able to paddle out there, you know, no problem. And I started surfing, and they helped me a bit, and I started surfing, and I was going straight to the beach, but like, it was so fun. And probably was out there for, you know, 2.5 hours. And that really made me decide that, okay, you know, this is fun. I can do it. It's just going to take some time. And, you know, I was one of those guys who just thought, yeah, how hard can it be, right? You jump on and you go, like, and wanted to be instant success. And so what I did was, I got home, when I got back to Toronto, and on the lake, I just tried to chase every wave I could find. And a lot of days we don't have much, but some days we got, you know, where I live, it's on the west end of the lake. And so when we have a southwest wind, we get these great, you know, like, 2 to 3 foot waves that are pretty fast and relatively clean. And really fun, you know, not the most challenging downwind in the world, not the most technical downwind in the world, but super fast and super fun. And then if it's east, it blows down, you know, all 300K of the lake, and it gets big. Like, that's where it gets head high. And some of those pictures, you remember those pictures you saw in the winter that you reached out to me about a couple of years ago? That was a big east wind day.
I gotta find those.
Yeah, those are like those are February 2017. on Instagram. You should find them, and they're epic. And but what happened? I just chased every bump I could find, and I took a beating, And but I went back to that to Surf to Sound in the which is a race that they put on in Wrightsville Beach in end of October, first week in November. It's being replaced by the Carolina Cup this year because of the pandemic. And it's like you do half a graveyard. You start in the beach and you go down towards the jetty, and then you get into the inside, and you finish at the blockade runner. And I remember I didn't get off the beach so well, but when we got in the downwind leg, I passed Chris. And I remember him yelling at me. He goes, "Where'd you learn? You got skills now. Where'd you learn to do that?" And that's just like, I just paying my dues, right? And so, we don't learn as fast on the Great Lakes as people in the ocean because we don't see conditions like you see in that picture.
This is Lake Ontario.
Often enough. That's Lake Ontario, yeah. But we do see them, and if you're prepared to go out in them, then
There's proper waves.
It's a proper wave, yeah. Now, like I said, they're not every day, but when you get them, those waves there, they don't look that big because we're on a fairly high up, but those are chest shoulder high, like that. That's the same day, and so we see some good waves, and anyway, so that's how you learn. But it's like from humble beginnings, right? And it's much like my first experience in a C1, falling out of the boat, until I just couldn't fall out anymore. Like I got exhausted falling out, swimming and pulling myself back up in the dock. And it was the same thing on that first downwind that I did. It was just, and I do like the fact that, I'm not ever going to be in that downwind group with Connor and Travis and Tituan and those guys, but I'm competent now, and of I'm in solid in that second group of guys, at that, when at a race like Carolina, in the ocean, and that's without living on an ocean. So I'm good with that, and the cool thing about it is you can be my age, 57, and you can still be getting better at something, which is really good too, right? Because a lot of people think it's all over and it's all downhill once you get to a certain point. But again, I come back to the complexity of the sport, and it's I work real hard to try to maintain my fitness so that doesn't become a liability. But I'm not going to win races on fitness anymore against a kid who can A, train harder, and B, recover faster, and C, is just younger and fitter, right? That's just not the way it works. But because of the complexity of the sport and the skill that's involved, if I can continue to improve my skills, then I can continue to improve as a paddler. And if I can maintain fitness and improve skills, then I'm improving. And how often do you get to say that in a sport that you can get better in your 50s? It doesn't happen very often. So I'm really very that's the thing I love about stand-up paddling too, is that I love being on the water, but I found something that's where I can continue to get better every day. And so that's fun. That makes you want to keep getting out every day because you keep getting better, you keep improving. And how good is that?
Well, speaking of getting better, you're making a lot of people get better because you started Paddle Monster with John from Distressed Mullet, and that's kind of taken off. You guys that's the go-to resource now, really, if you want to train, online. Where are you guys at these days?
Well, we started in 2016. He'd been thinking about some type of online coaching thing and getting some of the paddlers that he'd meet them all the time at the Carolina Cup, and he'd been asking me about it, and I didn't really have time to do it because I was teaching full time. And then I took that job. I quit teaching to take that job coaching the national canoe team leading up to Rio, and that was working great until the funding ran out. about 4 months before the Olympics, and suddenly I had no teaching job and no coaching job. And I remember the good thing about it was they told me the funding was going to run out, so I had time to prepare something else. And I remember seeing him in November at that Surf to Sound race, sitting in the, eating breakfast at the Blockade Runner. He came up and it's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he talked to me about this coaching thing again. And I was at a point in my life where I needed something. And I said, I explained the situation. I said, I'm all in, I'm all in, yes, 100%. So we worked out, some like a sort of a vision for it. And the idea was that we wanted to be able to provide coaching, online coaching, to people who didn't have any either coaching about technique or about training. And the other thing is that I kind of wanted to be able to reach more people and help more people rather than confine it to, like a handful of people and be really, I didn't want it to be really high maintenance where I was, doing Skype calls all the time and only working with a handful of people and charging a lot. I wanted to charge less and help many, many, many people, right? Like when I started stand-up paddling, I remember looking online for information about how to do it. And I couldn't find any. Like there was hardly any good quality information out there. And so I started to try to figure it out on my own or by talking to somebody like Jimmy. And what I wanted is for people who were starting or who were, I had no intention of coaching pros at first. It was just helping the masses and providing them with really solid information about technique, about training. And it took off right from the beginning. And I've been able to basically make a living doing it since we launched in May 2016. I think that within a couple of hours, we had 80 subscriptions on our launch day. And that speaks largely to, John's ability to promote it through the mullet. And Of course, now the mullet is no more because we rolled it into Paddle Monster. So it's like a whole new Paddle Monster. You're on the website now. We've got other coaches. We've got Seychelles, who's got a group that she works with. We've got Victoria Burgess, who's awesome. She's like a nutritionist and she's a PhD in exercise physiology and a paddler. She's done some ultra endurance stuff and she's raced. And so she's amazing. We've got Chris Chapman, who was a strength and conditioning coach for a lot of Olympic sports in Canada, including the canoe kayak team for 8 years. And we got Travis, who everyone knows. And so that's
a solid lineup.
Working with group. It is a solid lineup, and they're working with groups of paddlers, and some of them have smaller groups. And I've probably got the biggest group just because it's my whole gig, and for Travis, it's a part-time thing, and for Chris, time gig. But it's still sort of the same plan in terms of how the people that we coach. Although, I did start to coach some pros. Like I remember a couple of years ago, Connor reached out to me, and at first I thought it was a joke. I thought, okay, who's like passing himself off as Connor? Like, like I'm looking around at the guys I'm paddling with, thinking, okay, which one of you wise guys is setting me up here? But he actually wanted some help, and so I've worked with him, for the last couple of years, and the first year I worked with him was really successful. He was a world number one, and he won all the events he kind of wanted to win throughout the year. And then last year for him, it was really successful too at the end of the year, and he was considering specializing more in certain types of races rather than others, and I think that's a good strategy for him. And he was really successful again. So that's been fantastic for me, and getting to know him, and getting to go to Hawaii, and he brought my girlfriend and me to Hawaii last year, and we stayed with his mom and dad, and trained together for a week. It was fantastic. And then coaching Seychelles too, who is a lot of fun to coach because they're quite different, obviously, as personalities, but they both have that thing that high level athletes have, and that's that they leave leave no stone left unturned approach to preparation. They're always trying to find ways to be better, and always willing to consider trying new things, and they're analytical in their own ways about their training and about their performance, and so coaching athletes like that is the same as coaching the Olympians that I was working with in canoe kayak. That's the quality of athlete that they are. So that's been amazing. It's helped me learn a lot more too, that I can help apply to other the more. And I don't want to insult any of the people that we're coaching in Paddle Monster, but I would call them the more recreational racers, and that they're not pros. Yep. They're people who are like me now, who we're racing for fun. We put a lot of our time and energy into it. And we have goals that are very important to us. Like each of the Paddle Monster athletes, they have goals that they work really hard for that really are important to them. But they have jobs, they have careers, they have families. This is something that they're doing for fun on the side. But they take it seriously and they want to do well. And they should have coaching too. There's no reason that they shouldn't have access to this coaching like professional athletes do. So that's who we're working with. And we're really trying to, with the combination of, with rolling the mullet into Paddle Monster and kind of having a new Paddle Monster, we're really trying to, blow it out and make it more global, reach more people around the world. And during this pandemic, we're really trying to keep people going, keep people connected. Because I think for all these people that are frustrated and can't get on the water, they're locked down, they're staying in their house. A lot of them are like I am right now, and I've only been off the water for a week, but like they're in despair because they can't do what they love doing. And I think what they need is or what they're lacking right now is just the a sense of being able to go and do what they love doing, and knowing that they're taking a step towards their goal by doing it. And I think that there are things that you can do. And getting back to that leave no stone left unturned approach to training, there's some things that you can do in your house that will help you. They're not. It's not an optimal replacement for being on the water itself. Nothing replaces that, but you can still do things that are going to be productive for helping you improve, so that when you do get back in the water, that you'll be better. You'll either understand what you're trying to do better. You'll be able to have addressed an element of technique on land that you're going to be able to, better understand and do better when you get on the water. You can do some fitness stuff that just in the, in your own house without even stepping outside, that will, that can prepare your legs better to be better when you get on your board, and work on your balance so that, your proprioception in your feet and your lower legs, so that you'll be able to detect wobble in your board and make appropriate correction readily. You can do all these things on land, and we don't normally do them because we don't normally have to. We just go out and get on the water. But in actual fact, some people are, they actually benefit from taking a step back and taking a little bit more of a remedial approach of learning things on land before they go out on the water. Like I discovered when I was a kid, back again, once I got my balance in C1, but hadn't yet figured out how to paddle properly, I used to get pictures of the top Canadian who was, he won a silver medal at the Olympics in Montreal in 1976. And he was my hero when I was a kid. And there was no internet then, there was no YouTube. I couldn't see video of him, but he was in magazines and newspapers all the time. And I would cut out pictures that I'd see of him in the magazines and newspapers. And I would arrange them by what part of the stroke he was in, like the catch or the reach, the middle of the pull, the exit. And I'd spread them out on the ground in front of the full-length mirror at my parents' place, and I get like a broom. And I get into the positions in front of the full-length mirror that I saw him doing in the photos.
Wow.
And I could actually, because the broom would flex a little bit, when the bristles would bend, I could actually sort of do sort of partial paddling motions. And what I was doing is I was putting my body into motions on land that it needed to get in on the water. And I would find those positions, like I'd find that position at the front of the stroke. And I was able to teach my body what those positions felt like, so that when I got in the boat, I knew the position, my body knew the positions it was looking for. But those are hard positions to find when you're worried about balance. And it's the same thing on a stand-up board for, a lot of paddlers who don't have a world-class set of skills. They need to they need to learn the positions that it's one thing to tell somebody to get in a position when they're on their board, but it's an entirely other thing for them to do it. And so there's drills that you can do on land that help these people find these positions, so that when they get on their board, they know what they're looking for, and they can achieve them. And to use an example of how effective it can be, like the last time I paddled was last Saturday, and I had been doing some land drills on Facebook Live for Paddle Monster, and I did one of the exit. So the point in the stroke where you finish loading and getting all your weight in the blade, and as soon as you get to that point, you really want to start to unload and come up, right? And you want to do that with the blade still in the water, so that it's still got pressure against the water, it's still working in the water, and it's gonna, as you come up and reload your body forward for the next stroke, you're working against the water and you're accelerating your board off of the exit. And so I showed them a land drill for that I found to be really effective. And I got on the water on Saturday, and I did these like minute on, minute off, minute on, minute off pieces for I do it like 3K of a minute on, minute off, and then I rested a couple of K, and then I did it again coming back. And I was like, I'm doing the exit better than I've done it in a long time. I feel amazing. And I credit just yourself. The fact that I'd been doing those land drills. It was a refresher on what I should be doing when I get in the boat. Yeah, here's a land drill here, it just, people can benefit from this kind of stuff. And this is exactly the material that was missing when I had started paddling and was desperate to learn quickly. So we're trying to put as much good information out there to help people through this strange time that we're in. Seychelles doing a lot of great, home workout stuff and a lot of yoga stuff, which I think is really useful. That's especially good for people that, are unable to paddle and kind of need a chance to get some, not only physical, but like emotional and mental break that exercise gives you. Victoria's she's a registered sport nutritionist and a PhD. So she's doing some things with people on sport nutrition, which I think is really good. And a lot of this information we wouldn't be putting out there if there weren't a pandemic, because we'd be too busy coaching people who are paddling every day. And so I wouldn't say that it's a silver lining to like this really big cloud that seems to be over all of us, because there isn't anyone in the world who wants to be in this situation, but
it's good you find it positive.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and you're doing the same thing with this podcast and other stuff that you want to get going. It's like, as a community, as a stand-up paddle community, we have to kind of look out for each other. And we have to, even if we can't be in the water right now, we've got to keep people's interest up. Yeah. And we've got to keep people realizing that we're part of something that's much bigger than just, ourselves, and that we're there for each other. And that when this is over, and it will be over at some point, we're all going to get back out in the water. And I think we'll even appreciate it more than we did beforehand. And
Oh, absolutely.
if we can have some, if we can have people better informed when they get back in the water, or if there's new events that arise because of it, then it's, we've managed to find a positive out of a very negative thing, and that would be better than just moping and feeling bad about it. So
absolutely, that's well said, mate. Speaking of things that we want to get going, I've got to show you something very special that we're going to be launching in a couple of weeks. It's a bit of a world premiere. It's the virtual Larry Cain. I don't know if you've seen marble racing on YouTube, but it's the new craze because every other sport is not running. So I thought, I love commentating sup races. That's my happy place. It's just speaking a million miles an hour when you guys are out there doing your thing.
And you're very good at it too, by the way. Like you, if we're ever an Olympic sport, you're my guy to do the commentary.
Oh, thank you.
I'm serious. I did the commentary for the Canadian television in 2012 for canoeing.
Oh yeah,
and it was really fun. I enjoyed it too. But dude, you killed anything that I could have done. I love your commentary.
Oh, thank you.
I'm serious.
That means a lot coming from you.
You're really good at it. You're really good at it, and you do a real service for our sport. I don't know how anyone could not find it Olympic worthy, based on what we see when people are doing it, and B, the way it's presented when you've done the races that you've done. It's really good.
Oh, thanks, mate. Well,
and for guys like me that are stuck, miles and miles and miles away from the races, I feel like I'm there when you're doing it. So I appreciate it.
Oh, that's good to hear. No, I love commentating, and I'm having withdrawals at the moment, so I've decided to create this little virtual race league using marbles named after my favorite paddlers. So here's the Larry Cain yellow marble.
Oh, great.
And we got Connor in here. Here's T2. Basically, I got 24 of these racing marbles.
Awesome.
And here's Bruno. We're actually building a track right now, a mechanical track. We're going to do this little circuit. The first one's going to be called the Marble Liner Cup. It's going to be out in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to commentate like it's a real sup race and just go all in. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
I think you're going to be pretty competitive. Your power to weight ratio is pretty similar to Connor's in this league. So,
oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So, are you telling me that the marbles are different sizes based on, or are they all uniform marbles?
They're uniform. I've painted them all custom skins.
Okay.
There's Connor.
Right.
So you're all. I think it's the. It's the 25 mils. Yeah. 25 mil marbles.
Cool.
So they've got a nice weight to them.
But Connor's going to lose his rough water skills advantage against me in this kind of race, right? Unless you've got a track that throws some surprises out at us.
We got a few surprises in the track.
You got a few surprises, yeah. Oh, this is going to be great.
It's going to be very awesome. Silly, but it's going to be very fun, I think. Yeah. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Back on the mic and commentate these virtual sup races with marbles. So look out for that in a couple of weeks.
That's awesome. Yeah, fantastic.
But on that note, mate, it's 1 a.m. over here, so I'm afraid I've got to go. But honestly, I'd love to do this again with you. It's been a pleasure chatting, and I
enjoy it.
I don't think either of us are going anywhere anytime soon. So
no.
If you want to jump on another call in a couple of weeks, I'd love to chat some more.
I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this. This is like the same as the breakfast at the Blockade Runner, but there's no killer breakfast, no bacon and eggs, and
That's right.
It's all good. I really enjoyed it.
I missed the Blockade Runner breakfast buffet and Tower 7 for dinner.
Yeah.
Next year we'll be back there.
Well, we'll hope for November. I don't know.
They haven't cancelled. They've postponed.
Right?
That's good.
So yeah.
All right. Well, mate, it was an absolute pleasure.
All right,
everybody, check out Paddle Monster. Every afternoon, you guys are going live. You're doing amazing things. Sign up for coaching with Larry Cain. And, let's chat again soon, buddy.
Okay. Cheers. Okay.
Right. We'll catch you again for another episode tomorrow, everybody. Paddlecast Quarantine Edition. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers.